Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of This Week in X presented by Crushing Comics. We are here today assembled to talk about X-Men number 18 out on the 24th of February, 2021. And that comes with a caveat that this is a full spoilers discussion. We're going to be digging into some parts of this X-Men run that have happened in months past. We're going to be probably mentioning some of the House of X and Powers of X. Really, anything is fair game in the Marvel Universe. So this is a spoilers discussion that you are about to enter into with us here. X-Men 18, it's new. It's the return of our X-Men in the vault. And I want to go around and have our lightning round of reactions as we like to begin with. Tyler, what did you think of this one?
I mean, the Children of the Vault is one of the more interesting things that were introduced in the Darks era. And I was really looking forward to this issue. In some ways, it exceeded my expectations. In other ways, it sort of fell short. So I give it 3.5 pots out of 5.
Harry?
All right, so this is a weirdly complicated issue for me because on one hand, I think compared to the last two issues, this issue is much better. There is a voice, there are fun moments, there are good action scenes. The last two issues were kind of trash in a lot of ways to me. But on the other hand, this is a shockingly slow issue considering how much we've been waiting for this plotline to continue. Now, I don't want to predict what the next issue is going to be. I am hoping that this was a more decompressed issue that is getting attached to these three characters before next issue's fireworks show. Now that's me being optimistic. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but I would give this issue 3.5 Weird Vault kids out of 5. They're not kids, but whatever.
Fariha.
Hickman really makes it difficult for me to claim him as my soulmate. I mean,
Yeah, this one's been tough.
So this issue has 2 pages that were data pages in X-Men 5, and now we're getting it as pages over here. Talk about wasted space. I mean, now I care about these things because Peter told me to care about them. Or he mentioned it, and I care.
Peer pressure.
Yeah, peer pressure. Well, it's not. I mean, I'm just
Peter pressure.
Yeah, peer pressure. Peter pressure. But the thing is, it's like every X-Men issue has been. It's about introducing an idea, and then it's getting explored somewhere else. The idea of the issue is every time the mutants are coming back, they're coming back more powerful, or something is going on, which kind of leads you to think, what on earth is going on with Quentin, who has come back so many times. And the thing is, like, the synth is a synth, right? Synth.
Sync. Like, let's get synced up on this issue.
Yes, I don't have anything more I don't know anything about this character, but it seems like the fact that now he can replicate power of other people is like, it's super interesting, but it also kind of shows that, okay, why could he just only do mutant, or so there's like a lot more questions being done. But the thing is, the fact that it's like we've been waiting all this time for whatever should happen involved, and that's just to have like a day one fight scene. I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah, it's so not what you're expecting.
Nah.
That's the thing. Like, they were in there for 537 years, and some change. And
now we're in day one. Like, I was like, oh, come on. I was expecting to be like, much movement. Like, we're going for day one, year 200 and something like that. Anyway.
Peter, what about you? What's your lightning round type of thoughts?
I think that this was modestly successful. I think Children of the Vault, who I'll do a little mini explainer on after this for people who don't know, I think they're a very Hickman kind of thing. I think Hickman's going to use them very well and is using them well here. I just think that there's no way that this issue could have stood up to the setup of it, and it failed for that reason. Like, where we left this in X-Men 5 was already in the future of Cyclops saying it's been, as Tyler just said, 537 years, what have I done? And I just think that the scale of it was a little too slow, a little too small. When I got to the end of the issue, I literally went back and counted the pages to be like, what could that have really been 20 story pages? Which, incidentally, was the same thing I did when I read X-Men issue 5. I was like, was that really a whole issue.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people liked that issue. I'm sure a lot of people like this one. And I'm just like, I would rather have the overstuffed issue that maybe New Mutants was this week, where maybe it falls a little bit by overstuffing, than this issue, which didn't even feel like 20 pages of story. That said, Hickman does get some really interesting concepts across. He makes me really fall in love again with Sync and Darwin in a way that I'd forgotten about over the years. So I think it accomplishes a lot. I just think that it needed to move a little bit more quickly and get a little bit farther, not just as an issue of the comic, but because of the way that he set it up.
Yeah. I mean, the
will...
next issue is about them too. So
right, it's one of the rare 2-issue blocks. We had a 2-issue block for the Brood. We had a 2-issue block for Empire. This is only the third time outside of X of Swords that we're getting a 2-issue block in X-Men rather than just one.
But I would say though, do not under any circumstances read X-Men 5 and this back to back. It will make you mad. It was a little annoying.
No, I
that's
actually,
my whole point.
Yeah.
I actually did what you said not to do, but okay, even before that, I know I like to harp on editorial mistakes, and some of them are pretty minor and nitpicky, but I think it is very disrespectful to your creators if you forget to change the name on the freaking front cover.
Yeah, the Comixology version of this went out. I don't do physical comics, but the Comixology one went out with the credits from last issue on the cover.
Which was like,
the credits from this.
Come on,
Booth.
I was like, again?
Yeah.
Martin, the disclaimer again?
I would leave.
I saw that and I'm like, oh, we have to do the whole disclaimer again. But then I was like, oh no, it's not. And the thing is, and here's the thing, I couldn't tell the difference.
What?
No, that surely is a joke.
Yeah.
I don't even like Azwar, but Azwar does not look like Booth.
No, first page.
Okay.
The first
I was for a page or two. I was like,
nervous. First couple of pages. Then as I looked through it, I'm like, oh, that doesn't look like the 90s style. Then I looked back, and then I saw that on the chat.
That you saw that they all had a weird smudge on their chin, and you knew that it was Azwar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do wonder.
To quote Jamie Braddock this week, do better.
That's a good one. I don't know if this is, I don't want this to sound like I'm making excuses for the book, but I do wonder, since we are trained with this series to kind of read them in one issue, like one story installments, that having an unexpected two-parter might make it feel more slight. I think the book's plenty of slight on its own merits. I just wonder if that might be a factor as well.
Well, no,
I'm not sure. I don't know.
I mean, in some ways, I feel like Hickman is actually really decompress everything in his X-Men. Like when you read his Fantastic Four, when you read his Avengers, maybe because he's the only writer and he has to get somewhere within a certain time period, his stories are a little bit more it's more concise. Like every issue has something going on. But here, I mean, at least, for this issue, for X-Men 5, like Fariha mentioned, it is really like stretched out. Like I think 5 and this issue could have been one issue, and it was still, it worked perfectly, because like Fariha said, the first section of this were actually repeats in terms of the writing.
Yeah, these are data pages from issue 5.
Yeah,
they're not verbatim the same from issue 5.
But they were almost exactly the same, except for one mistake, which in X-Men 5 it says class or, and here it says class AI. And then of course we do get Seraphina's words coming in, and there was like added things. So it's almost like the the X of Swords, the history of the Aracos, where you repeat it 3 times and each time is slightly different. So I'm not a huge fan of it, but in this case, because it's drawn differently and it's sort of the captions were used slightly differently, I can let it pass this time. But I'm a little bit torn in this case. Like so that's
the only thing I was gonna say though is like either take it out of 5 or take it out of here. Like take it out somewhere. Like, don't put the same information and same boring information twice. Like, seriously, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that was the thing for me.
I
Like, and it's interesting because you're saying repeated data pages, but they were kind of like pseudo data pages in 5 where Serafina was like in an environment and the data was overlain onto them. And these pages are much more like standard comic pages, which is why I just was like, what repeated data pages? But I guess my position is give us a new perspective or like tell us something new.
Yes,
like
exactly.
Even in the X of Swords example with X-Men 12, which many of us disliked, you can't deny that it told us something totally new that we couldn't have gotten the first time. And so I just feel like this actually just repeated it. And all we saw was like her physically standing in front of this face, which was more like implied in the other one. So I'm like, But let's just talk about Children of the Vault for a second. Back in X-Men 5, Cyclops says, the Children of the Vault represent the single greatest existential threat to mutantdom. But it really begs the question, like, why is that? And are they really so different than Krakoa? The Children of the Vault could be seen quite clearly as an influence on some of the things that Hickman is doing with Hoxpox and into Krakoa. So they've only made 2 prior story appearances. First, both by Mike Carey. First in X-Men 1991, 188 to 193, which is the very beginning of Mike Carey's run before Messiah Complex, before the title turns into Legacy. And then again in Legacy, immediately following Second Coming in Legacy 238 to 241. And the whole idea of the Children of the Vault is that they have this kind of time-distorted world. Cyclops even points out back in X-Men 5, it's very similar to the world, home of Phantom X. And they're rapidly evolving there because the time is different, but they're evolving with technological aid rather than just with the evolution of their genes, which kind of sets them a little bit against the X-Men, especially because, and this is kind of an answer to my own question, but then I'll turn it over to all of you, they're a threat to X-Men because they represent rapid development of technology that is outside of the purview of the X-Men. And even though Cyclops doesn't know Moira's directives here, you know that Moira came back from Life 6, where her whole goal was to learn about AI, by saying, like, we have to keep an eye out for certain signposts of technology and its integration with human intent to make sure that we're not in danger and head them off. That's the whole reason they blew up Orcus back in Hoxpox. And to finish this up, we did see Children of the Vault briefly, this child, Serafina, in X-Men 1, because she had been kidnapped by Orcus, which means there's this crossover point of, like, did Orcus learn from her? Did she learn from Orcus? And I think that does kind of answer the question of why do they pose such a threat? But you can't help but come back to, like, they pose such a threat because they're like mutants. I mean, they're on a real damn similar path of evolution, only fed by technology rather than fed by gene evolution. So that is my Children of the Vault explainer, but I guess I want to turn it over to the three of you and say, does that work for you? Do you like that plot? Do you think, what are the parallels that you do see? I don't know. Tyler, let's start with you.
I mean, I think it was Professor X who said that they were the greatest threat and not Cyclops. But you know, the thing is this, I think what Hickman is trying to establish here is that these Children of the Vaults are post-human aided by technology, which was exactly what happened in Life 6.
Right.
So that is why I think Professor X mentioned that this is the greatest threat, because that is actually, I think, the one life that Moira actually got to see the humans get taken over, and the humans and mutants basically get supplanted by the post-humans, and it went so far into the future that that they became a relic in a conservatory, in a museum, or something like that. So that's one thing, and the other thing I think they were trying to establish is this: what is happening inside that makes it different? Because I think the X-Men have went into the world before, and they knew what was happening inside there, but they have never been into the vault. So I think that's the part which kind of was the main reason for sending those three in. These are the things that I thought work really well in this issue. And the thing is that it took so long to get there.
Yeah. I will say I thought it was Cyclops because Professor Xavier is framed out in the background of that panel, and I when I went back to it, I was like, oh, I guess that's a misplaced word balloon, because who else could be speaking? But it's actually Professor X leaning in out of the woodwork, literally. Harry. So Harry, let me ask: have you read those other Children of the Vault stories from Mike Carey's run?
No, I desperately need to read the
Well, you shouldn't have to, I guess, but I'm really interested in your reaction to this, kind of just with the hearsay of us talking about them. How's this working for you?
I mean, yeah, this is like easily the most interesting thing happening in the X-Men main title, period. Like, I mean, I don't know these characters, but like, obviously I understood what they were being introduced. I looked them up a little bit after issue 1, and this is clearly their existing characters are so in line with Hickman's ultimate goal here of these figures on different tracks of like progression. So they feel much more essential, intrinsic to this master story he's telling, which is probably why I like this issue. It feels more important in its own way than the last, and X of Swords and all that. A weird thing for me is just because I haven't read that book, as I'm reading this series, which is introducing, the AI that's for me. I mean, I don't know about y'all. I assume it just seems massively similar to, Evil Reed Richards and Hickman's Ultimate books. And like, I'm just trying to figure out how much of that was already existing in Carey's book, how much he's bringing to that. So that's just like a weird place where my mind went. But yeah, this feels like the essential conflict that Hickman's kind of setting up between these two ideological and kind of like, evolutionary factions. So it worked very well for me, is what I'm trying to say. That's good.
Fariha, who also, if I'm not mistaken, has not read that Mike Carey material.
No, I have not. But I'm going to bring back one of the old backstory from my past, where I keep on talking about 15 Lives of Harry August, because
it's back, folks. Yeah. I hope you've read all of our back issues, because it's back.
I'm going to
from
make
our old
you all
series
read
and a previous publisher.
Yeah, I'm going to make you read all of this, because that's the central fight in it, that humans are exceeding because of technology and they have no control over it. That's why Harry keeps on coming back and trying to stop them. Like, trying to stop this from happening, because
Harry keeps on coming back, so I won't let you kick him off the show, Fariha. It's not because
Fariha.
That's a good one.
God help
me.
But
the thing is that that's why Harry August keeps on coming back, because what happens that, Hitler now has Facebook and he was tracking everyone. So it kind of gotten to that point, and there was like a whole, anyway, backing away from that. Even though I didn't read Mike Carey, I was actually more interested in seeing, is Hickman setting up these post-human as the next level of evolution after mutant? And that's why, the same way humans see mutant as a threat, mutants are seeing them as a threat. And then, but the thing is that a justified, how do you reconcile that? Because they are definitely set threat to them, because they put them in a museum. But the thing is though, how is that any different than the humans seeing mutants as threats and trying to stop them? I was kind of going more into that.
That's absolutely what I got from it. Like 100. As I went back and reviewed all of the Children of the Vault stuff, like they're aggressive right out of the gate. It's not like they're like totally passive good guys who the X-Men just happen upon and have a fight with. But at the same time, like they're just trying to live their evolutionary life too, even if they're a little villainous in nature. And I think it really sets up that question. Like, this is just another Krakoa. It makes you, I think, look at Krakoa from the outside for a little bit in a way that a lot of the other titles haven't, by giving you something that's so analogous to Krakoa, which doesn't really exist in the Marvel universe, other than maybe like looking at the Inhumans or the Eternals or whatever. And here's Hickman being like, oh no, we don't have to like go read Kieran Gillen's Eternals. Here's some other group of characters who I actually can hold in comparison to Krakoa and make you look at it from the outside.
It's such a more dangerous idea than, go ahead.
No, I want to hear about the dangerous idea.
Well, no, it's just like,
now that you said that.
Well, just it feels so much more threatening as a concept, because we've pretty well established at this point that the mutants right now are the superior or the next line in line evolutionary compared to humans. But this is this whole series, this faction is proposing you are a future, we are a different future, and that's much more like immediate and feels more dangerous, where it's not just like the typical conflict. It feels like a raising of the stakes in a way. That's how I always interpret it.
No, I was going to say though, if you ask some humans, they would also say that, that man just blasted optics from their eyes. That's very dangerous, you guys. So if you think about it from that point of view, that yes, like the next evolution is always going to look dangerous. Like the same way boomers are scared of Gen Zs. So, So there's like, I think it kind of makes sense that it was like mostly from the evolutionary and all of that. So I think it's super interesting for me to see where this goes.
No, but I thought, I mean, for me, I think is what my question mark is: who is behind? Who are the architects of these children of the vault?
Exactly.
Right? Because
assume the AI,
because
but...
when you're comparing, say, mutants were the next evolution of humans and these were the next evolution of mutants, I think that's not how Krakoa or Professor X and Moira is viewing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because remember in Life 6, Moira's experience was this: the humans created the Sentinels as a stopgap to prevent the mutants from taking over so that they can catch up. And the way they are catching up is using technology to augment themselves so that they become post-humans. So they leapfrog, they basically leapfrog the evolution of humans to mutants directly into post-human using technology. And thereby rendering the mutants obsolete. So, and that's why that is a threat. But in this case, the children of the vault are sort of viewing both humans and mutants as a threat, because they say that, the humans with the powers, they are secondary threats. The mutants, they are the primary threats. So who is behind these children? I think that's the other question that I thought we should, that I hope we should, we will get an answer to.
Let me take us yet one level deeper into this in the other main plot, which we've already teased, which is 6 rapidly adapting powers, as we learn more about in one of the data pages. So in X-Men 5, the data page theorizes that the 5 were correcting minor imperfections as they're making these new husks. And just by as if you welded a new or soldered a new electronic circuit from scratch, that if the connections are stronger, maybe the system will be more efficient. Here, however, we're revealed that further studies concluded that powering up for the first time in a new husk may allow an amplification or a, quote, breakthrough in powers. Now, we've already teased, I forget who said it, that whoa, Quentin's died at least 18 times. Yep. What does that mean for Quentin's powers? Has anybody died as many times as Quentin so far? But
that means his power will be 102.5% stronger than before. Sorry, I did that.
Yeah.
Well, it's it's like how we have to make Fariha talk to us about X-Men every day, because talking to us makes her like X-Men 10% more. By the end of the week, she likes it twice as much. So fractions. But here's my question to all of you. Is this not just using technology to revolutionize the improvement of a race? The whole point of all these X-Men books is that the 5 are a mutant machine and that mutants are forming machines all over the place. And I guess I just feel like it's kind of hypocrisy for them to go after the children of the vault when they too are combining their power in a technological way to create improvement. I mean, literally, they are doing the same thing as the children of the vault. Am I crazy?
No, that's absolutely the point. It's saying, you are not as different as you'd like to think you are. There are analogous groups, and that is a much more, I feel like, dangerous, threatening thing to kind of view it that way, because it makes them less special, but also makes them more vulnerable. I feel like I'm onto something here.
Do you really? Taking that a step further, because that's interesting. Do you think the X-Men, once this memo or gets further out in Krakoa, are going to start changing their mind about resurrection? Like, do any of them want to see some of these mutants that are considered to be too powerful to begin with, Legion, Magneto? Do they want to see an Omega mutant get put into a new body? Like, are some non-Omega mutants gunning to get killed? Like, how does this change the whole universe of resurrection, Fariha?
I mean, that's one of the reasons this issue is so interesting, and this is what Hickman does best, is like introducing an idea and then just be like, run with it. So I'm pretty sure X Factor is going to talk about this. This is precisely what it's getting set up for. But the thing is, it's also, to your point, is that whole idea of that you eventually become your own enemy, living unchecked. And this is what it is. They are becoming their own, they're becoming like their own enemy that they have fought so long. but this is one of the best things that can happen to mutants and X-Men, and I'm here for it. Because oh my God, they're becoming so powerful and so dumb at the same time.
Well, that's what's cool. And maybe this is how I read that data page, but just, all these data pages, especially these, they're a little ominous because you see the weaknesses and the problems that are rising, and you realize in the moment these characters can't see it themselves. And for me, what I read, when they were mentioned like, oh, there are slight anomalies to his baseline scans, but we wrote them off. I'm like, well, hold on. I feel like there's more to that story, especially because I think this is huge in the fact like the Resurrection is not as locked in and static and like understood as they know. There are variations. No, and I feel like that makes this more unreliable. I feel like that's a huge thing that might be developed down the line. Like what is going on with these bodies?
To agree with you, like Professor X clearly do not know no. everything that he put in place, right? And just go back a little bit. Let's not go into this. Go too deep into this. For me, I thought I love the callback when Sync was using his power. There's this rainbow aura.
Yeah, because that's the fact. I got very excited by the coloring there.
That was like the only panel that we see that, and it's such a good callback because that's how his powers were depicted in Gen X. And I was like, oh, awesome! They did not forget that, and I thought that was really, really cool. And the other thing that I thought was we were talking about unreliable narrator in one of our episodes.
But that's what this is all about. Yeah.
Yeah, Sync basically described it. It's like, we remember the things that is most memorable to us.
Well, I took that also
as nostalgia work, people.
I took that also like almost explaining how they're gonna at least relay the 537 years to us, where it's going to be like, we remember the biggest parts and we were there.
Day.
Day one.
For day one.
I remember everything else.
Yeah.
But I think that was an opportunity to get farther here. Like if you're going to set up this kind of Rashomon effect of like different people remembering different parts of different stories, and maybe you get to tell it out of order, and maybe we as the reader have to go, why are you going to blow your chance to do that here with just a setup issue and like push that on to the next issue? I just felt like I wanted to see one hint of it here. There were so many pages. Look, I'm all for big splash pages that are splashy and like have an impact, but there's a 4-page sequence here of giant pages with 2 or 3 panels, and the art just was not that good. And so I'm kind of like, if you're going to give me a page that has 2 word balloons on it and the art's not that great, and the only thing that happens is this page is people stare at each other, then you had room to do more stuff. And this is, as I go back through and look at the Hickman run, I don't know that it's like I hate Jonathan Hickman so much. I just think he's telling really decompressed stories, and it makes me angry because honestly, these artists, you and Azrar, are just not to my taste. I would rather have the Booth issue from last issue, which barely made sense, but was overstuffed with crap, than have one of these super decompressed issues. That's just how old I am. That's the kind of comics that like appeal to me. But I had my seething rage, and it wasn't because anything was written badly. I think Hickman did great voices here. But when I got to those 4 pages of 3 panels each, I was done. I was like, screw this.
Devil's advocate here. And I don't, I agree for the most part, honestly, but like, I feel like if this had been a more concise issue where it had those jumps immediately, for me, just personally, I don't know these characters that well, and I did like getting their voices a little more figured out. I wonder if we had just done immediately, the day 1, day 100, day 200. Like, I wonder if that's great on a plot perspective. That would get a lot in, but I wonder if I would care less. That said, there's a lot of overuse here. That's the redoing of the data pages is inexcusable. I cannot argue with that.
So I think like one of the best way, if I were the editor, I would do it in a way that each one of them, because it's all about unreliable narrator. So each one of them is telling a story. And then in the end, we find out one of them is telling the story from a different time period, and then how it combines together.
So what you're describing is Powers of X.
Yeah.
I know.
Let's do it again.
I mean, I've been rereading Powers of X because I just finished up a Hickman guide, and I was like, I kind of forgot how much I loved Power of X. Like, I loved Powers of X.
But the thing is, like, but the Powers of X, it takes so long to get there, and when you're reading week to week, you kind of don't realize it. But if it's like doing it in one concise issue, and you know it ahead of time, then you pick something up. and then it kind of goes in, it reads in a completely different way. Shout out to Naoki Urasawa's For 20th Century's Boy. That's how he's telling the story. Anyway, so, but the thing is, like, to that point, like, you know, so that's one of the reasons. It's like, okay, we didn't even go to the last page, second to last page, like, oh, year 200. Like, you know, give me something like that. Like, you know, compress it. Like, okay, this is day 1, and then year 200 is Laura telling the story.
That's what his Avengers book did in that time travel arc. Every ending of the issue.
That.
Yeah,
Peter
it was like 1,000 years in the future. Peter just got a rage stroke.
Yeah, he just, like, you know, just got stuck.
Yeah, it was fun.
Love that. But the thing is, and I do want to talk about the very last data page, because what on earth, what the F is the point of having rules if you can just bypass them whenever?
Well, surely you're allowed to kill if the people are like actual enemy combatants.
Right, but then
that's the whole point of X-Force, right? The Force protocol. So this is just an X-Force splinter group, right? It has a Wolverine on it. It's X-Force.
I was thinking that. Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, in some ways, I sort of agree with Fariha. It's like, you know, maybe it's the Asian in us.
Yes, like, exactly. It is.
It does not work if people are given free passes.
Yeah.
Like the law will not work in that sense. But then on the other hand, if you're going to have a Black Ops team, they're going to break laws.
I'm kind of in the middle. I agree with both of y'all. I'm like, you're being very liberal with this, but also these are like super people, like, I guess. And you're also in like a hellscape of like a 500-year torment. Like, I guess do what you got to do.
I think mine comes more from engineering point of view, because it's like we have interlocks and we have all of this in place from an operation to do. But the thing is, like, if it's like you're breaking you have to bypass that interlock and you have to do something constantly, that means the interlock is wrong. Go correct it.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you know, in that case, don't say murder no man, say murder no man unless you have exhausted all your options. Like, you know what I mean? Just add an addendum, change it in some way.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I come to that from the data perspective, right? Of like really having done a lot of work with databases and data models, which it's like, you know, if you're like, oh, we just had to make this one field break, or like we couldn't apply the ISO standard because it turns out that people write the name of the state with different abbreviations or whatever. Like at some point you have to just say, well, you've destroyed the reliability of the data because you allowed for exceptions. Like at some point you have to decide when the exceptions stop. And I think that it's with these rules, it's like, oh, we see all these caveats, but then what happens the first time a mutant uses that as self-defense? They're like, well, I had to invoke the Force protocol because my life was at risk. Yeah. Like, or I had to invoke the Force protocol because someone else's life was at risk. But how do we get from there to basically just like a stand your ground law where the mutants are just like, I just saw the need to kill somebody? It's a slippery slope.
No, but that's the thing, right? In the data design perspective, if you have to make exceptions all the time, then you got to go back to the drawing board.
Right, your rule is wrong.
Your initial designs are wrong.
Or your instructions are wrong, right? You're instructing people in a way that allows them to not understand how to interface with the data.
Back to this data page, right? I kind of love the fact that Hickman is keeping score because it says Krakoa 1, Vaults 0.
That was so funny. It was really, I noticed that too.
Yeah.
No, I'm reading all of these data pages as like written by people who think they're smarter than they are. Like the hubris is all there. You can see where this is going page to page. They've established rules. Now they're breaking them. It makes sense in the moment, but you can tell they're being more liberal. And I feel like it's all there. So I think it's going one way.
I have a question.
Tyler's question, Fariha's comment, and then we're going to wrap this up. Fariha.
Yeah. Fariha,
I'm just saying that all this like discussion is like it perfectly gets my engineering heart going. So I really love it. But that's what I'm saying. Maybe this is the start of questioning those rules, questioning those laws. Yeah. So we established this back in like Hawks 5 or Hawks 6 or whatever it is. And then now we're coming back and we're finding that things are not going right. And then maybe we'll change that rule.
And also X Factor has been like campaigning. I mean, not X Factor, the 5 has been campaigning with Professor X. Is like, well, we should do this. And Professor X is like, no, X-Force takes priority.
Yeah.
So exactly. I have a question.
So the thing is like, no. One last thing I want to say though, this is more of a it's also a question. We talked about that the people coming back and they're coming back changed. Do you think one of the 5 is deliberately doing it? because there are some questionable characters, one of the 5. So that's what I'm saying, is one of them deliberately doing these things, and one of them is doing it because his mother told him to. So
I don't know. I don't know, but these are absolutely the questions we should be asking at this point. I think
because the thing is, like,
something.
I really did not like the whole the crying scene, because I saw I'm like, no, son, no, you know something.
You're up to something,
You're up
sneaky
to
boy.
something. But anyway, so that's just where I go.
All right, Tyler's question.
The orders given to the children of the vault all happens in force.
Yeah.
Like, protect the city, protect the city, protect the city, protect the city. Like, it's always repeated 4 times. Give me your report, 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 report. So I was just thinking, like, what is happening? Like, who are this 4-headed thing that is behind the vault?
I kind of view it more as like just like I don't know where this AI comes from. I almost view them as like a natural progression, just like things go. Advanced AIs just appear. It's just something that happens. I haven't thought of a culprit behind it, but that would be more interesting from a narrative standpoint.
Well, the way I would sum it up is more so than any plot across any of these Dawn of X and Reign of X titles, the next issue is set up for a big payoff, right? I don't know that we've had any of the series set up a payoff as big, other than stuff leading into X of Swords, than what is teased for next issue. So this is a chance for X-Men to really step up and do something super memorable, or really make a sad trombone noise in a way that's going to be, I think, pretty indicative of how this run is going. I don't just say that to be a mean person. I'm just saying, at some point, you got to deliver the goods. So I think the next issue is going to be really interesting. I think a lot of us were pinning that on this issue because we're like, Wolverine's going to be back. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
I think it's fine to break it into 2, but I am so interested to see what issue number 19 brings. And then issue number 20, the solicit on the cover has Nimrod on it. So I think we're in for 2 pretty big make or break issues.
Well, next issue it says
no pressure though.
Yeah, what is the Krakoan? Tyler, close us out.
It stars.
Oh, the good part of the run is going to start with issue 19. You heard it here.
Yeah.
After 18 issue, it starts.
All right, folks.
I love Hickman, but
that's the end of our discussion of X-Men number 18. If you want to see discussions of other X-Men comics out this week, just look elsewhere on the channel. And we will be back, as we always are, with more This Week in X next week. Because as with issues like this one, we read the issue in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long it takes. But then part of the fun and part of the kind of fee for entry is the ability to get to be in these discussions. Because why, Fariha?
Better when it's read together.
That's right. X-Men is better when it's read together. So from the 4 of us together, Tyler, Harry, Fariha, and I, to all of you, we hope that you're well, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.